Welcome back from the break. Now, the cultivation of marijuana remains an offense in Ghana as the Supreme Court has, in a majority 5-4 decision, affirmed its judgment, which questioned Parliament's decision to allow production for industrial and medicinal purposes. Portions of the Narcotics Control Commission Act allowed the Minister for Interior to grant licenses for cultivation of weed. A private citizen, Izwami Manan, took the matter to the Apex Court, insisting Parliament was not transparent in passing such a crucial law. The court in July 2022 upheld this view and struck out that portion of the law. The Attorney General filed processes asking that the court set aside its own decision. Well, this request was not granted. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable joins us with more. Joseph, we understand the AG pointed out that the court is interfering with Parliament's authority to pass laws. Tell us more.
As far as Attorney General Godfred Yeboah-Dame is concerned, the laws of Ghana, the constitution for that matter, is quite clear that it is Parliament that has the mandate to pass laws. And so if Parliament is seized with a bill and makes changes to those bills, it cannot be said that anytime they want to make changes to a particular bill, they would have to start the process again and provide a memorandum to explain why they are making those changes. He believes that if that decision, which has now been affirmed, was allowed to stand, it will mean that there will be more or less a fetter on the powers of Parliament, and Parliament will be curtailed in their ability to meet its obligation as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution to make laws based.
Okay. Now, this particular view was challenged by a private citizen. What does his lawyers say on this?
The lawyers for Izwami Manan, led by Fiba Emihie, took the view that what the AG was saying was not accurate. They insisted that the law was quite clear that when a bill is being introduced, it must come with a memorandum that explains in detail what that bill seeks to do. They contend that sometime around 550, when Parliament was considering the Narcotic Control Commission bill, the suggestion was made for an amendment to allow the cultivation of marijuana for industrial and medicinal purposes. Now, the lawyer argues that that was a significant shift from the policy position that ought to have been stated in the original bill that was sent to Parliament. And so it could not have been sneaked in a manner that it was sneaked in. And so on that basis, she took the view and insisted that the Supreme Court was right in enforcing the Constitution, since the Constitution had been breached. And the whole idea of that constitutional provision is to put Ghanaians at large on notice on important legislations to enable them make inputs where necessary. And so that was the view that she urged on the court, which the court upheld.
We know it was a 5-4 decision. Run us through which judges formed the majority and which ones were part of the minority here.
So in terms of the majority 5, Justices Jones Doche, Professor Ashikote, Maria Mousu, Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, and Emmanuel Yoni Kulendi, who originally authored the ordinary bench decision. In terms of those who formed the minority, Justices Lovelace Johnson, Amadou Tanko, Samuel Esiedu, George Kumsin, they formed the minority view. And as you can see, so the initial one was 437 judges, 2 new judges being Justices Lovelace Johnson and Maria Mousu joining this panel to make the 9. 2 other judges on the original panel also retired, and so they had to be replaced by the 2 new judges, Samuel Esiedu and George Kingsley Kumsin. And so 4 new judges joined, but the makeup still, the difference in terms of the original and the review did not change significantly. And the Supreme Court says that its review jurisdiction is of a limited nature and the threshold had not been met, for which reason they decided to affirm its decision. So as it stands now, the section 43 that was struck out by the Supreme Court remains struck out. So you cannot cultivate cannabis either for industrial or medicinal purposes. Grace.
Did the court draw the distinction between industrial hemp or marijuana? Are they the same thing anyway?
I mean, the court did not have any reason to venture into any aspect of that particular issue. In fact, the section 43 that was struck out, let me just read that specific section 43. It says it's titled Special Provision Relating to Cannabis. 1, it says, despite section 39 to 42, the minister on the recommendation of the commission may grant a license for the cultivation of cannabis, which has not more than 0.3% THC content on a dry weight basis for industrial purpose, for obtaining fiber or seed, or for medicinal purposes. 2, for the avoidance of doubt, a license granted under subsection 1 shall not be for the cultivation of cannabis for recreational use.
Okay.
And so the court, this was the provision that the Supreme Court struck out completely, saying that this provision is no longer in force as a law.
Any idea what happens next?
We understand the Attorney General's office holds the view that they disagree with this particular decision, so they are considering the option of starting the whole process again by setting in motion a law, having a bill go to Parliament to allow for the cultivation in the manner that Section 43 had contemplated. But this is early days, yes, but our sources have confirmed at a very high level to us that it is something that the AG is considering and is taking seriously. And it is in the spirit of that belief. That's why they even filed this particular review. And if that did not succeed, then this is the next line of action that they intend to undertake.
All right, Joseph Akabile, grateful to you. Now, Nana Agyemang is president of the Hemp Association of Ghana, and he joins me in the studio. On Zoom is Nana Obuade Boateng Bonsu, who is president of Concerned Farmers Association. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Nana Agyemang, your first reaction to this development where the Supreme Court has, affirmed the decision to strike out that law on marijuana cultivation in this country?
Well, you see, I have to go back to what you're saying, and a hemp evening to all your viewers. It's nothing to do with marijuana. You are saying it's marijuana. It's not. Even Evans Akabile read the section. It's talking about industrial hemp. Cannabis, industrial hemp, and there's a huge difference. And unfortunately today, all the news that has come out on your portal and everyone else's portal, unfortunately, is fake. Because we're talking about industrial hemp that has a THC value of 0.3. It's not what you smoke, it's for industry. It can build this studio. It can produce wood. It can make everything plastic. It can make textile for clothing.
So for the, ordinary person, what's the difference between the cannabis and marijuana? So that's when I can tell the difference between the two.
If you see the two plants together, which is highly unlikely because one cross-pollinates the other, the industrial hemp plant is 16 feet tall and it's very slim. It has a thick stalk. The marijuana plant, which locally we call weed, will grow about 6 feet tall and it's very wide. And it has buds. Now these buds, when you take these buds off and you dry them, that is the weed that we are talking about. But on the industrial hemp side, it doesn't produce those buds. It produces seeds. That's what it produces. And the industrial hemp, as I was saying, is used to make so many different things. One example I gave earlier on in terms of medicinal is that you can take the oil from the industrial hemp and you can give the oil on a particular basis to our children, for example, who suffer from epilepsy. And it will cure them from having those seizures. It also has inflammatory compounds within it. So if you have inflammation of any parts of the body and you take it, it will reduce the inflammation. It deals with chronic pain as well. So it's also very good for that. So industrially, it's a new industry that we would be creating that would provide thousands of jobs and create thousands of entrepreneurs. And on the other side, medicinally, there are ailments that young and old people are suffering from alike, that this CBD, which is called cannabidiol, would also deal with. So, I pray your indulgence that you've still got it up on your website and the others too, and it's making the general public confused about what we're talking about. We're not talking about marijuana, we're not talking about weed, we are talking about industrial hemp, which is something completely different. It's a new industry that could bring billions of US dollars into our country. That's what it can do.
So the industrial hemp is the cannabis that we're talking about?
Well, cannabis is the name overall you can use. But there's different strains. And this one is hemp.
So on that basis, what then do you make of the ruling today?
Well, basically, the Supreme Court has slapped the parliamentarians across the knuckles because they believe that, and the plaintiff, this was the plaintiff's case, that because the amendment significantly altered the Narcotics Control Commission Act, then it should have been gazetted so that the wider public would have an idea that, okay, this Narcotics Control Commission Act is in Parliament, but there has been an amendment that now gives authority to the minister to issue licenses, having been recommended by the Narcotics Control Commission. At the time, because I was there, at the time, the parliamentarians didn't believe that they had to gazette it, and I didn't take anything of it because both sides of the House are in agreement with this law. Both sides came together and said they fully agreed with the law. When the amendment was provided, both sides of the House also said they agreed with the amendments, and on that basis, they didn't feel there was a need for it to be gazetted because there was no opposition whatsoever. So basically, the Supreme has wrapped the parliamentarians across the knuckles and basically told them, you don't know what you're doing. And if you want Section 44 to be added into the law, because remember, the law is now there. It was passed 20th of March 2020. The President assented to it 11th of May 2020. So they're saying if you want Section 43 to be reintroduced there, then you must go and do the right things.
Anyway, now that we understand the Concerned Farmers Association some months ago appealed to the government to take a second look at the industrial cultivation of marijuana in the country. President of the association, Nana Obwade Boateng Bonsu, says the industrial cultivation of the plant has the potential to be Ghana's economic game changer. Grateful, Nana, for joining us. Now, why are you of the opinion that cultivation of this industrial hemp is one of the low-hanging fruit to help change the economic fortunes of the country?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. You did not, the title is Farmer General Nana Obwade Boateng Bonsu. Looking at the industrial hemp and then the benefit that is in it, it is quite huge, which is going to help we, the farmers in this country. Because at the end of the day, we know some other countries like Canada, and even now, Germany, they are about even to legalize it. And this is for industrial purposes, not what others have been talking about. Like maybe when they legalize it, people are going to smoke it another day. This is unsmokable. You can't smoke this. This is for industrial purposes. So I think legalizing this industrial hemp is going to bring a lot of, and I might talk about thousands of entrepreneurs, but I'm talking about millions of entrepreneurs. We are just going to make more money. And at the end of the day, our country will not go to IMF again if we're into it. Because looking at the kind of money that this industrial hemp is going to produce, or we are going to get, it is going to help build the whole country again. So I think the Supreme Court need education. They need to educate Supreme Court about the industrial hemp. Maybe the Supreme Court think about, they have it in mind of the smoking aspect, that is the weed. And this is not weed that we are talking about.
Okay.
This is industrial hemp, which is going to help us to make more money, because the farmers in this country are planting a lot of things that they are not making money.
Okay.
So this thing is going to bring us more money. So I think.
But do we have some farmers in Ghana who are already cultivating that in this country?
I have no idea about it because it is illegal. It is illegal. So
from the court's decision, it tells that your advocacy that you started some month ago has not worked. All right. So Nanajiman, from one Nana to Nanajiman, you heard him there. The Supreme. So if I understand you well, it means that the Supreme Court would have to take a second look at it, isn't it? What do you think should happen now?
Well, they wouldn't have to take a second look at it. They've given a clear direction. if we want it to be re-included or reintroduced, go and do the right thing.
Okay.
You're significantly going to change the Narcotics Control Commission law that is there already, act that is there already. And in order to do that, they believe, the Supreme Court, that it must be gazetted. Put your things together, bring it to Parliament and gazette it. And let's start the national debate if that's what it's going to take. Let's have that debate before it can be reinserted into the law. But I think it's very interesting what Nana is saying, because I think we've got to recognize that, look, with industrial hemp, this $3 billion that we're talking about, which is even going to be spread over 3 years, is something that Ghana can make within a year.
Okay, $3 billion.
Very easily, very, very easily. And, you know, Nana says, no, it's not thousands of entrepreneurs, it's millions of entrepreneurs. It's a significant number of entrepreneurs, and certainly a significant number of people who are now going to be employed. Government can't employ anyone, but the cultivation, the processing, the manufacturing, the storage, the distribution of industrial hemp can employ thousands of people at one go. Do you understand?
So it means that we are not at a dead end. Parliament can still get.
No, we're not at a dead end. Where I've seen this type of thing before. It doesn't put me off at all. I'm not fatigued by it at all. This is Ghana, and to be quite honest with you, we're very slow. By the time we have an uptake on this, so many other African countries would have already begun, and they'll be producing so many things that will have a lean part of the market to get involved in. What we need to do is speed up the process, do it properly this time, so that we have a bigger slice of the cake in terms of the market. Because, look, our economy is depressed. It's embattled, it's bruised, it's on its knees. We were talking about, what were we talking about? Ghana beyond aid. And now it's Ghana begging for aid. When we have industrial hemp, you know, the president was totally right when he said, we're sitting on top of money, but we're hungry. It's an indictment on the government. It's an indictment on the president. Because why should we be sitting on top of money and yet we are very, very hungry? Why? Why should that be the case? When we have industrial hemp here, we have the opportunity to establish a brand new industry that cuts right across. It has 25,000 different uses, and they all generate revenue inside our country. What is the problem?
Okay.
Why are we fixated on this weed and this marijuana thing when it has nothing to do with industrial hemp at all? Why?
All right, Nana, I will come back to you, but Nana Obade is joining us again. Nana, I was asking you that from the court's decision, it means that your advocacy over the month has not worked. What's the next action then for you?
Well, I think it's a disappointment. I mean, I am so surprised that Supreme Court just makes such a pronouncement or just a judgment on that, because looking at the number of young people on the street, the robbery, and even now we have the terrorists in our country, they can easily be influenced with a lot of money. And we have this industrial hemp that when we cultivate it or when we plant it, we are going to make billions of dollars. Why don't you pass it down? Honorable Etubondi, when he was in Parliament, he advocated for this for a long time. By the end of the day, Parliament put wax in their ears. I'm saying that this is the right path for we to go. This is the way. If Supreme Court is not going to pass this, is Supreme Court ready to pass the gayism and the lesbianism? Are they going to do that? This is the best way for Ghana to go.
Well, so now, what will you do next, now that the court has taken this path?
Well, we will still advocate and we will still put pressure on government, because millions of young people are on the street without jobs. Mobile phone is being snatched, killing each and every day. You can even imagine recently there was young people killing others, their fellow young man, just to go for sakawa or just for ritual money, which is alarming. And now the youth now are lazy all because what they are cultivating, they are not making more money. So now they are now entering into betting system. might bet at theater and the rest. But when this weed, or when this industrial hemp is being legalized, I think a lot of young people can get into it, get a job to do. We can make our shoes here, we can make our dresses, medicinal purposes. We have a lot of people on the street that they are begging for money all because of.
All right, so that's Nana Obuadi here then. Nana, so what will be the next line of action that you will take?
Well, I think for Hempire Greek Ghana and the Hempire Association of Ghana, we must review the decision. Unfortunately, the written review will not come out yet, but it doesn't stop us from meeting with other stakeholders and looking at the options that we have still available. It's not over by a long shot because the law is already there. As far as I'm concerned, need to reintroduce Section 43, and we need to do it in a way in which we can show that we're not talking about we're not talking about marijuana, and we can provide the concrete examples of what industrial hemp can actually do, so that the parliamentarians will be clear, the Supreme Court will be clear, the media will be clear, and the general populace of Ghana will also be clear that what we are promoting at this stage is industrial hemp, something that will give people employment, something that will give people hope for the future, because at the moment we don't have hope for the future because we are trying to borrow our way out of the financial quagmire that we find ourselves in. In fact, what industry do we have here in Ghana? We are a consuming nation. We are a nation of consumers, and we need to change that. And we have the opportunity to change that with industrial hemp. What is it we are waiting for? I just don't know.
Okay, Nana, I'm grateful to you for joining us. Yeah.